won a total victory. He will blame Herzl Halevi for everything that does not go well for him, Kahane said. Well, some 64% of IDF reservists and immediate family members say that the burden of reserves on them is heavy, with personal and family hardship outweighing emotional difficulty, according to an October poll commissioned by the Israel HaShofet NGO. The survey found that as the war continues and reserve service lengthens, an increasing percentage of respondents say that passage of a law that would exempt Haredi Orthodox from military service would harm their own personal motivation to do reserve duty. Uri Keidar, executive director of Israel HaShofet, spoke with our reporter Naomi Segal.
We are speaking with Uri Keidar, executive director of Israel HaShofet, against the backdrop of the extensive service reservists have been doing in this ongoing war, and a survey that the organization conducted with a snapshot of attitudes and the state of the reservists. Why don't you first of all tell us a bit about that?
So we have been conducting this survey pretty much every couple of months now for the last 8 months, if I remember correctly, mainly because we understood that there's a pretty new phenomenon in the Israeli society, unfortunately, that myself and my family are part of people who have been serving hundreds of days since October 7th in reserve service due to the war that our country is in, which has created an unprecedented, in the last 5 decades or so, situation in Israel in which tens of thousands or more people have been conducting reserve service pretty much as part of their daily life now. And we understood that this specific community of people who serve and their immediate family is something that needs to be taken care of and also to be watched. So we are doing these surveys, again, to understand, as you said, the snapshot of the situation at the moment. And as you can expect, the situation is getting worse as time goes by. And I think that people who are usually and still highly motivated, who went out of their homes on October 7th to protect the country, and has pretty much been doing that ever since, are sensing that it's pretty, I would say, unbelievable that while the service is being extended again and again, you still see that the government is trying to formulate pretty much a total exemption for the ultra-Orthodox community. And with that happening simultaneously, it's pretty, I think, damning from all sides of the discussion.
From your experience, from the response that emerges or the picture that emerges from this survey, hundreds of days in service. I mean, that's a large number. What kind of impact is that on family dynamics, on the ability to support a family, to continue to work on day-to-day living? How are people managing?
So what we're seeing is that 64% of the respondents are describing the burden as heavy or very heavy. And a lot of them are saying that the most problematic aspect of that is, as you're saying, their family. What happens to their wife and kids? What happens in their lives? How does that impact the fact that all of a sudden, again, usually a father, but sometimes a mother, pretty much disappears from the daily life of a family? People who have become single parents without anyone asking them if that's the situation that they want to be in, because the father, again, or sometimes the mother, has went on to an extensive reserve service, sometimes on and off, sometimes with, let's say, a month in between extended periods of service. And in that situation, you see a lot of people who are saying that, yeah, them themselves, their family, their kids are paying very, very high prices for the situation. Mainly, you don't hear those people saying, and then I won't serve, because they understand the importance of the service. They understand that they're protecting the country. They understand that they're doing what is needed in this time of crisis. But then again, you see that when they're being asked about what happens with the people who decide not to serve, you understand that their personal and their understanding of the national motivation is being drastically cut. And you understand that they see that it's highly unexplainable to them as well as the broader Israeli public. How come is it that while these people and their families are paying a very, very high price, the government is still trying to do whatever it is in their power to exempt tens of thousands of young men from any form of service. And I think that the contrast is becoming starker and starker as we go by.
So
we see it in the data.
In terms of their response, when they talk about motivation to serve, there's a change when it's set against that parameter of others who won't?
Yeah, so we saw in May 24 that 57% of the people who responded to the survey said that if there won't be an extensive draft of ultra-Orthodox men, then their motivation will not be hurt. That number was almost cut in half when we were talking about October. Now you only have 31% of people who are saying that it won't hurt their motivation. And I think that it's very easily explainable. If you have been serving, again, for hundreds of days, it's an unimaginable number. If we have been talking about this 2 years ago, no one would have thought that this even is an imaginable number or something that can happen in real life. But it is happening. And when it's going on and on and on, and when people are being called at the eve of Rosh Hashanah for another month or two, or God knows how much days, for the third or fourth time, when they're doing it in combat units, when they're doing it, again, in an unprecedented scenario, then yes, the motivation is becoming harder and harder to keep up for all sorts of reasons, which are very normal. But when you add up to that, the fact that they see that their government is saying, yeah, we will call you again and again and again and again, but we need to take care of some politics in between, and we need to make sure that the constituency of a huge chunk of this government doesn't pay the price that pretty much everyone else pays these days.
Aside from the response on the data, is this also being felt on the ground in terms of reservists who are not coming when they're getting repeat call-ups?
So you saw today there was new numbers that were published by Yediot Achronot, if I remember correctly, about the decline. I think that, first of all, if the decline is something that is easy to explain. We saw on October 7th, when army units were called, you saw 150% of the people come up and say, I want to do something. I want to take part. I want to be there when my country and my unit and my friends need me. And as time goes by, it becomes harder and harder. But I think that also it's very hard to explain to people how come you need to recruit really from now to tomorrow tens of thousands of reservists. And while you're doing that, you see that behind your back, the politics are playing a very, very different game in which we need to find some kind of a solution. The solution might be very, very long term. We need to make sure that when yeshiva students are approached about drafting to the army, it's being done in their own conditions. We mustn't force them. And you're saying, why? Like, how come that's even a reality, or how come that's even a question? So I think that the contrast is something that people are seeing in front of their eyes more and more.
Even as there is discussion now ongoing to increase benefits for the reservists who are serving and to try and provide solutions to the economic hardships they have encountered, are you saying then that that's really only one piece of the issue, and what is needed, and I guess this is what Israel Chofshit is involved in, is changing the model of service and how service is thought about for all of Israeli society?
Yeah, I think that mainly, with all due respect to economic benefits, and thank you for giving us that, we want to be citizens. We want to be home with our families. We want to be there when our kids need us. We want to be there on our daily lives. We have a daily life. We are citizens. We did not choose to go back to serving in the army without any point of ending the service at some point. And I think that people are seeing that, and it's becoming harder and harder because the discussion is, let's see how can we give them more benefits when, first of all, even the benefits that were promised were still not given to the full extent. But even if you put that aside, people, I think, mainly want to be living their own lives. They are here for the country. They have been serving, again, for hundreds of days. They don't want that to become their new reality. And I think that when you see that at the same time in which people are, and a big chunk of the government is trying to find a way that will de facto release tens of thousands of yeshiva students from the need to do a single day of army service, and then it's just unimaginable. And in this situation, we're getting to a point in which people just can't understand how this future look, and when you're describing the model, like are we expected to be serving 100 days a year now? For how long? How is that even going to play out? And that's even before you start asking the questions of how does that impact the Israeli economy? What does it even mean? I think that people are saying we do not want to live in Sparta. We did not choose to live in Sparta. We are coming when we are being called, but we cannot accept the fact. And again, I think that the reason that the laws of exemptions haven't passed is because a huge chunk of, as you said, pretty much, I don't know if all, but almost all the spectrum of the Israeli society has been saying, folks, enough is enough. You cannot do politics on our backs while we are genuinely fighting for the country. And I think that it's an important change and a positive one as far as the society goes.
So then how do you see perhaps generally this playing out, this specific legislative effort, the future of these pieces of legislation, the daycare subsidies law, the draft exemption legislation, and alongside, call-up notices are going out to the Haredim, but it's not just about sending call-up notices, it's about education from day one, about the idea about service.
It is, but I do want to say something that I think might sound simplistic. We at Israel Hafit, and I think it is becoming a broader theme, we just do not think that there needs to be a law for recruitment of ultra-Orthodox men. There is a law. We have a law in Israel in which the draft is mandatory. You are not being asked if it fits your way of life. My parents weren't asked when I was 18 if they think that now is the good time for me. By the way, I guess that their answer was no. I don't think that my parents, when I was 18, wanted me to go and be a combat soldier because no parent wants that for their kids. But they understood that this is a situation. And I think that what we understand is that the ultra-Orthodox parties, with the support of Benjamin Netanyahu, are now trying to make sure that Israel goes back to October 6th. As far as this is concerned, that the way that they were used to have such an enormous privilege will just go back to existence. And I think that the Israeli public is actively standing in their way. And I think that this is what we're going to see in the next few months. I don't think that they understand the backlash that the Israeli society creates as far as understanding that no, it's not only about economic benefits, and no, you cannot allow people who do not serve to get enormous subsidies because that was what they are being used to. It's not a given right, and they just need to go and enlist to the army. And I think that this is a broader thing that is going to be part of how this Knesset session will play out.
Uri Keidar, Executive Director of Israel Hafit. And now this song, Can't Stop It, Lo Yachol Atzor Et Zeh, about the Second Lebanon War.